This is Marcus Whitney's audio universe.
Like, you gotta do the work. You gotta show up and just do the work.
What's good? What's good? Happy Friday. We made it. What a week. Whew. What a week, y'all. But we're here. Welcome back to another episode of Marcus Whitney Live. Today, I have a friend of mine who, you know, he actually got into the podcasting thing probably around the same time as I did. And it was so interesting because when I met him, he was this young executive, sort of, you know, leading, mature beyond his years, leading this nonprofit in the community, you know, introducing me to other people in the community. And, you know, once I started to get to know him a little bit more, he started telling me about his passions with acting and these other things. And I started to realize, wow, I know he's this executive, but he's got this huge creative side. And then, like, I didn't see him for a minute, and boom, he came on the scene with, like, all this content he was creating, which I thought was just, like, so dope. I was like, all right, man, my man, like, is living into his purpose and into his creative spirit. And so I got to be on his show, which was a blessing, and I'm happy to have him on my show. So without further ado, my man, Aaron McGee. Aaron, what is good, my man?
Man, Marcus, what an intro. I appreciate that, man. You know, I would always be nervous when you and I would talk because, you know, it was always, I'm presenting myself as the executive director that I am, and I'm trying to get, you know, some feedback and some mentorship from you. But at the same time, I said, Aaron, you keep leaking out. Like, my creative stuff, it keeps leaking. I keep telling Marcus about another stage play or production. I'm like, man, he's going to think I'm not serious about this, leading this nonprofit, man, because all I really want to talk about is being creative. So, yeah, that is true. And I was hoping I wouldn't be judged for that, man. But look, here we are, both podcast hosts now.
Exactly. No, I mean, honestly, man, it was quite the opposite, right? Because I've never been a person to do one thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think one of the things that I felt like I was picking up from you, even back then, was because you weren't able to spend as much time on that side, it was actually making you not like the day job you had. You know what I mean? You weren't able to kind of feed that creative part of your soul. And so I just always remember hoping and wishing that you would be able to get to do that more.
Yeah, man, you really saying something there. And honestly, that's really the catalyst for me doing podcasts, being more or expressing my creative side. You know, I studied communication, mass communication, radio and television production. And most of the people who knew me prior to being an executive director or CEO and working in the nonprofit space, they knew me more so for the work that I had done in producing content for myself and for others. And what I found is that, man, I get into this nonprofit space and I love this mission-driven work. You know, you're serving a community. I was serving youth in Nashville, and all of that was so rewarding. However, I found myself giving out so much in this sector that I just abandoned the fuel of creativity, man, that normally kept me going. And honestly, I got to a point where I really just couldn't take it anymore, plain and simple. I said, I'm about to burst. I know I have to do something creative. So I started to put a strategy in place, and one thing kind of led to another. I didn't just do the podcast overnight, but it was one small creative piece that got us here.
Yeah, and I know, you know, just from following you on social, I remember when your daughter arrived, you know, and I just know for myself, you know, I just wrote this book, and basically the book starts when I become a parent. I mean, effectively, yeah. Right? It's like that is the beginning of an entire new life. You know what I mean? Obviously, the life of your child, but a new life for you. You know what I mean? Thanks. You're born into something different, you know, when that happens. And so it was so cool to see you sort of blend this desire to create with this new stage of your life into what is now Fatherhood is Dope, which is great and so needed for so many reasons. So yeah. I mean, I just said what I saw. Can you share a little bit more about how Fatherhood is Dope came about, and then we'll kind of really dig into what it is and how you've been building it out.
Yeah, you know, one thing that I learned, you talked about me being a young executive. So you go into this space, and I knew that in so many ways the odds were kind of stacked against me. I didn't have the same level of experience that other people had going out for donors and things, or funding. But one thing I always told myself is that, Aaron, whenever you go into a room, make sure you show up as your authentic self. So you take that, it's a philosophy of mine. It's like, it's at the root, it's at the core of who I am. I apply that across all spectrums or walks of my life. And so you take that same philosophy and you put it in a creative space. So at the same time my daughter was born, I was actually teetering on, like, man, am I going to continue to do this nonprofit work? And I said, I know I want to do something in creative space. My daughter's born. So I'm like, you know something? There are a lot of mom blogs out there. Let's see if I can blog about being a parent. And so it really started off June of 2017. I started writing a couple of blogs here and there, trying to be expressive, trying to see if anything was going to really stick or land with anyone. And it did. And by October or September of that year, I started really diving into the dad space. There's really there's a dad space. It's small.
It's small, yeah.
It's small, but it's out there. And ironic enough, it was my wife who kind of introduced me to that space. And I saw the medium for podcasts. And just for the record, my introduction to communication was on the radio. I hosted a radio show.
Okay.
On campus, and I ran the radio station. So it was.
We just had a breakup. But I'm still here, right? Yeah, I'm still here. All right. Let's see if Aaron's going to get back. For y'all who might be watching. Okay, Aaron, hold on. We just broke up real quick. So, because we got bad weather coming in. But you were just talking about the radio station and that you were running it.
Yeah, so running the radio station. So I started in radio. And so when I thought about what's the next creative thing that I can do, it made sense because this podcast, they're not going anywhere. In fact, like, we're on an upward trajectory.
That's right.
And I said, it's time for me to get into the space. And so when I collide this idea, this philosophy of showing up as my authentic self with this idea of, man, I want to be more creative. I want to express my talent in this media space. Podcasting about fatherhood or blogging about fatherhood was meant really just a natural progression. And that's kind of how you get Fatherhood is Dope, and which I teetered with the name too, because I didn't want anything. We'll get into that, but I
want to get into that because, there's so much around that word dope, right? So
of course,
part of it, and I don't want to get into like the negative connotation. What I would actually say is the age connotation. You know what I'm saying? Like, like I'm 44.
Yeah,
dope was like of all the words that I would use in my youth to talk about something that was like incredible, dope was the word. That's dope. That was the word, right? And so when I see that, I'm like, and I know you're younger than me, right? So I'm just wondering, how did you land on that word? Because I feel like it's even a little old for you to be using that particular word. Like, why did you land on that word?
Marcus, first of all right. So dope. So here's what dope is actually an acronym, and it stands for doing our part every day. So fatherhood is doing our part every day.
Yeah.
Fatherhood is dope. Man, I was nervous out of my mind sticking to the word. It resonated, but I was like, the first guest that I started to engage around this fatherhood space, Jim Cooper, Charles Bone. I'm thinking about
by the way, for people who don't know who those two guys are, if you're not like from Nashville, so Jim Cooper is our representative in the House of Representatives, and Charles Bone is a very storied lawyer, leader in our community. Both of them are older white men. Just, we have to say that from a demographic perspective, so you can sort of understand why it might be funny that a show called Fatherhood is Dope would have them as early guests. Okay, there you go.
They were literally like my first guest, man. They came, they sat down, and I said, if I can land it with them. And I remember seeing Jim Cooper walk up to the building to do an interview with me. And I remember Charles Bone walking up to the building to do an interview with me. And I said, I'm going to stick the name. I said, this is for Fatherhood is Dope. and I waited. And I waited. And then I told him it's for doing our part every day. And, those two agreeing to even engage in my platform, engage in this sphere, they knew me from the nonprofit sector. And so there was trust there. And so with them kind of engaging in it, I said, something, it's a go. And I tell everybody it's doing our part every day, just in case I have to pivot at some point and start calling it, calling it what it is opposed to the actual acronym. But I love it, man. And it really is just a testament to dads showing up and doing what we got to do.
I think it's great. It stands out. It's an emphatic statement. It is a little edgy, and a little edgy is good, right?
Yeah.
But it's clear what you're talking about is fatherhood. So I just want to sort of reflect back on you. When I saw you doing it, first of all, I just thought it was brilliant. I thought it was a great way to really chronicle the living experience you were having as a father.
Yeah.
And it made me think back around just how important the small group of other dads that I had when my kids were really young, especially when they were young, how important that community of other dads was for me, and one of the things where I really lucked out, man, was when I went to go work at Emma. Clint Smith's kids were basically the same age as my kids. Will Weaver, other co-founder, his kids were the same. All three of us had two boys and basically at the same ages. And so I went to work with these guys who were also fathers. And so we did not have to explain to each other that part of our lives and the things that we needed to do, in addition to the work we had to do. And it was something I took for granted. But when I was watching your show, I was just like, man, the community is so important. And it was something I took for granted that was sort of, baked in.
Yeah. Yeah, facts. And I think that was one of the biggest struggles for me. I say community, but you had to figure out, is community the geographical space, the geographical idea of community? Is community like my neighbors because we're close in proximity? And I struggled with all of those ideas. And ironic enough, I found, and this is why we're doing a live podcast, right? I found a lot of my community online. But even the search on the World Wide Web or social media was still a challenge of men who were actually willing to engage in this idea of fatherhood. And I think one of the bigger challenges were that men, we generally lead with our profession, with our work, with our purpose, and not necessarily our position as fathers. And you'll be amazed at how many men who are fathers, but you only know them in the context of the thing that makes them money or their hobby or a sport. And honestly, Marcus, I've seen a paradigm shift over the past 3 years, really, as we know, you can talk about hashtag girl dad and all of a lot of major sports athletes that, wear fatherhood with a badge of honor. But just in 2017, I really didn't see that. And I struggled with it even on the local Nashville space. Like, where's the dad meetup game? Because you can see moms all the time. Listen, quick funny story. So when my daughter was born, I took off 3 months and I was just with her. And that was really, really challenging. But I would take her to the Nashville Puppet Show at the downtown public library. Room is packed, full of kids. And Marcus, you already know where this story is going.
Yeah, I do.
You already know that I was one of maybe 3 dads in the room with, let's easily say 100 parents, 100 moms, easily.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
And so that was an indicator that, and most men have to parent on the weekend.
Yeah.
Most moms, and you see in the library, it's Monday through Friday. Yep. I'm there, all moms. Most dads, we parent on the weekend.
Yep.
So we're trying to get parenthood in, sports in. So when do we have time for community? And those are the type of barriers that I was really running up against and trying to figure out how to navigate this new space and bring other brothers, other dads along with me.
Yeah. Look, man, it's a really big deal. And it is. Fatherhood, I think, is a time where you're really looking for companionship because you're looking for someone where you can sort of share that experience with, and the thing that you're experiencing it for the first time, and you're looking for someone to be a peer more than an elder mentor. You're looking for a peer. But what I would say is that for men in general, even beyond fatherhood, that emphasis on money, job, career, those kinds of things, it means we struggle with relationships with other men, in general. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think women have done a much better job, maybe out of necessity, you know what I mean, of having these support groups, you know what I'm saying? Whereas men are like, we're kind of like out there in the wilderness, you know what I'm saying? Like lone, and then we look up and we realize, wow, we don't have any friends. We haven't built these important relationships, and that's why a lot of guys end up getting lonely later in life. You know what I mean? Like, because all they have is their work and their family, which is important. No, don't get me wrong, but the friendships, the brotherhoods, those things are important too. Those things are important too.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I see more men really working to break that cycle now. And honestly, I want to give a shout out to the dad community, because there are a lot of dad bloggers and podcasters and social media influencers who are really breaking the barriers and showing us new images of what fatherhood looks like on a regular basis, in your face, where you don't have to put down your manhood. You don't have to put down your friendships. You don't have to put down your sports or all those things that make you who you are, and still bringing along your kids with you and making them a part of your lifestyle. So I really appreciate that. And then the second kudos I want to give is really to, man, like athletes. I mean, we know the power and influence that athletes will. And so when you see someone, I'll just go straight up to LeBron James, or even some of our Titans players, like the way that they display fatherhood and make it front and center, like it helps a platform like mine. And it also makes it easier for folks who want to come on and be a guest too. So I appreciate that. And I've talked to some amazing dads, amazing men who are now proud, or they see that, man, there's actually a lane for me to talk about my role as a dad. And for me, that's rewarding. That tells me that there's so much more that we can do. There's so much, we can go so much further. Even, you already mentioned at the intro that you and I got to sit down and have a conversation just about fatherhood. How often does that happen?
No, so one of the things I wanted to tell you is that that was a very, very unique conversation for me. I do tons of podcasts. I've done lots of speaking, but the things I said on your show, I can't recall the last time I've ever said them, because no one ever asks them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No one asked you to just focus on your life as a parent, because it's a very different thing. It's an entirely different dimension. You know what I mean? I remember that you clipped out a part of the show where it was talking about me being a force in my kid's life. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And we were just riffing, but I was just telling you the reality. You know what I mean? Like the reality of it. And when I watched it back, it was even interesting as a reflection to me. It was like, man, that is such an important part of who I am to me. It's so, it didn't happen by accident. There was a lot of intent there. There was a lot of hard days there, but now my children at 21 and 19 years old, it's like there is this really built-in earned level of respect there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Where it's like they're out in the world. They're young men, and they know, like, I'm like, look, you guys got, you're making your own decisions. Yeah. But at the end of the day, there is this respect that I've been able to earn with them, that really ranks. I mean, it's hard for me to think about what is more important than the respect I've earned from my children, through the work. Oh man, he's like, I know right now he's not hearing what I'm saying because he's frozen. But anyway, it was a dope episode. I'm gonna put it in the show notes, the episode that I did with Aaron on this, and we got to figure out how to get him a more consistent internet connection. Okay, you're back.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. It's all me.
I know. Look, man. But we got storms going on, so you know what I'm saying, you get a pass on this. Okay, yeah. So let's now talk about just the content creation process, because you are one of the podcasters I've had on the show, and for us, we all know podcasting is not that easy. It's also not that hard, like once you get the hang of it, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's not super easy, but it's also not super hard. But it also doesn't make any money, really, right? It's like so I was talking to a very senior executive in the IAB, the Internet Advertising Bureau, this week, and they set the standards for the advertising, across the web, but like in podcasting, they set the standards for it, and they put out a report every year. And so, the total advertising revenue. This is not including the Joe Rogan deal and things like that, but the total advertising revenue is still right around $1 billion, which is not a lot of money. Okay, just that's not a lot of money in the advertising space. $1 billion total, right? So if you're doing this, you're not doing it for money, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm not showing up here every day at noon Central Time for money. There's another thing. Talk about what you have gotten out of this process and what is keeping you going, and how many episodes have you done as well?
Yeah. Well, let me just touch on the money part. Yeah. So it's really not a lot of money when you think about how many players are in the game doing podcasts and the advertisement dollars that go into. Just think about how much money people spend on Super Bowl advertisement for one Sunday, right? But the flip side of the money piece is that, this does bring, for those who are interested, if you find your lane, there are partnerships that this podcast has made me money, just not necessarily directly from the podcast itself.
Right.
So
Right.
I do want to just speak into that, and that's a whole nother conversation. But man, what really keeps me going is, it sounds cliche, but it is really my desire as a storyteller, or as a content creator. I believe that everyone has a story to tell. Before I was doing this podcast, I'm showing up as my authentic self. So this is just me manifesting in a podcast talking about fatherhood, which are two important elements of my life. But I believe that everyone has a story to tell. And I have this itch about me to draw it out of you. And ironic enough, most men feel like they don't have a story to tell that doesn't cover the elements, the areas that we talked about earlier. So for one, it's about sharing the stories of everyday men. The second part is about the creative space. And then, you see growth. I mean, Marcus, listen, I know who I'm dealing with in you. We're on Marcus Whitney's universe right now, audio universe.
Yep.
So we know that your vision is big. And I do have a big vision for this, man. And I'm really believing that if I continue to drive home, that we'll get there. Right now, I'm in season 2, pushing up against 50 episodes. 50 episodes.
Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's say it again.
50 episodes, and I only did one of them by myself. So man, I love this space. Like you said, podcast is not hard to do. It's not easy to do, but you find that rhythm, and I'm impressed every time I go and I look at my analytics, and I'm like, wow, they keep listening.
Yeah.
They keep listening. And that's the driving force when you realize that your message is resonating with someone. I always tell people, if your message can resonate with one person, you should stay at it.
That's right.
Stay at it.
That's right.
And the last thing I'll just put on that, man, as a creative, I don't know, we may have some type A personalities listening to this, and they may have some astounding content that could really change the lives of some people and really inspire people. And the philosophy, as it relates to production, man, I'm a perfectionist. However, being a perfectionist helped me up from doing a lot of things. And so what I tell myself in the podcast space is that it's execution over perfection all day. Because the beauty about podcasts, and this, you can show up however you want in the podcast, and somebody will listen. Somebody will listen.
Look, man, I think it's about showing up.
Showing up,
showing up, hitting record, hitting stream, and saying, okay, you ready? Let's do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hey, and Marcus, to that point, if you listen to season 1 of my podcast, you will see the progression. So I'm in season 2, phase 2. And if we take it back to this whole idea of an iPhone, the iPhone didn't start off like this. You go back to that iPhone 1 that was really big, bulky, and heavy, and then you get all the way up to whatever number we're on, 11X Max something. And so I think the encouragement that I will give people too is understand that whatever creative idea you have, understand the phases that are required for you to get to the big vision, because most of the time we hold ourselves up because we have the big vision and we want to start at big vision, opposed to the phases that get us there. So what you see with fatherhood is dope right now. This is phase 2 of 20, at least.
Right. I love it. So, I feel that it's the end of a long, hard week in what has been a hard year. And I just want to ask you about how the events of this year have affected you as a dad. I think that one thing, you talked about how we don't often enough talk about men from the perspective of fatherhood. One thing that has been consistent this year is that in these incidents, George Floyd, father; Rayshard Brooks, father; Jacob Blake, is a father, right? Yeah. And I think when we see these things happening to fathers, and we are fathers, for a minute there, when we had Tamir Rice and Trayvon Martin, there, and Mike Brown, right? We were looking at our children. Mm-hmm. Now we're seeing children that have to go on without fathers. You know what I'm saying? And Eric Garner before them. Yep. And so what are your just how have you shown up in the world, this week?
Yeah. This is, I can't lie to you, man. This week has been difficult, but for different reasons. I think even as a black man, and you see, I'm confronted with the danger that my black skin may present to someone, or my height, my appearance, right? And my position, even just as a man in general, man, I think that's been challenging, but it's always been challenging. I've walked in this black skin for 34 years, right? But I think what's changed, and before I get to this week, I just want to go back to George Floyd. I think the thing that changed for me, man, I've never felt like a victim, but I've never felt like a perpetrator at the same time. So I've kind of been in this neutral space where it's like, no, I'm not a victim. Like, I know who I am. This is,
Yeah.
I'm focused. I got this, right?
Yeah.
And I know I'm not a perpetrator because I'm not doing anything that's going to bring harm against another man and his family. So I found myself in this neutral space. We talked before, as you priming the pumping, you told me about your response to Mike Brown and how that impacted you. Well, George Floyd, I have point A is Trayvon Martin, broke me to my core, right? Then we get up to 2020, George Floyd. I've kind of shown some apathy. Hate to say it, but I've been apathetic toward a lot of things because it's like, okay, it's this buildup. But what I realized this year in the murder of George Floyd is that I don't feel like a victim as an individual, but I felt like I belonged to a cohort of victims in general, which are black men who have had harm brought against their bodies, right? So George Floyd wrecked me. You get to this week with Jacob Blake, and now I'm not apathetic. I'm definitely engaged, but right now for me, man, it's more so about, okay, well, I knew another one was going to happen. I knew it. We all knew it. We all knew it.
We all knew it.
So at this point, it's like, okay, what am I still resolved about today that's going to bring about change for tomorrow? Because I'm not going to just sit on the sideline and be victim. And I can mourn for every single one of their loss. And I think we should. There's a time for that. But now is the time to be engaged, to equip ourselves, whatever equipping yourselves look like for you when you determine what role you play in this. So for me, I spent the past several nights reading articles, figuring out what's going on. Couldn't bring myself to watch the video.
No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
Not doing the video.
I'm not doing that.
And I respect anyone, any man, any father, any black male that said he's not going to watch the video. It's too much. We've seen it. We know what it looks like.
I already know. We were kids looking at, at our relatives being hung up on trees. So I don't need yet another image in my head. You know what I mean?
We don't need any more of that to know what's happening.
That's
so
right.
I think when you say, how are you dealing with it this week? I've literally been laser focused on what action, what change am I going to bring about, and as a man of faith, I think I have two responsibilities. I have the spiritual narrative that I have to be responsible for, and then I have the social narrative that I have to be responsible for. And right now, I know what my spiritual narrative is.
Yeah.
We've been walking through the streets of Nashville since sometime in June, every Sunday, praying for the city to bring down social, racial injustice, all that jazz. We start at the courthouse and we go to the Capitol and back. And so I do believe in the power of prayer. So I'm praying for my city. And then what I've been doing is really just strategizing on how do we impact the social narrative of what's going on? How do we bring about change? How do you continue to partner with allies? So that's what I've been spending my time doing. I can't necessarily speak on my answer right now because I'm still gathering information.
No, you did, brother. Look.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You did. And I don't want you to feel like I was trying to put you in a position to have the perfect answer. You know what I mean?
No, I don't feel that.
All I wanted to know is how did you show up this week? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I can very much relate to what you said, right? You know, we have to process this every single time. And I think one of the hardest things about it is so crazy, right? It's like we're asked to live in a world of logic, and there's no logic to this, right? There's no logic to this. We're all human, and we know that.
Yes.
And yet and still, this false narrative, really, you know, this false narrative of one race being able to get away with things against another race. It's not true. It's not the truth.
Yeah.
You know, and so every day we got to show up and we got to watch these things that are falsehoods, that are lies, that wreck families.
That's good.
You know, and we got to try to figure out how to navigate that and come to some solution. And I just think, like you said, you've been living in your black skin for 34 years. I've been living in mine for 44 years. And I don't have the answer, you know, but I know that I have a spiritual responsibility to myself to keep myself healthy through this process so that I can show up in the most meaningful way and the way that I was intended to be part of the solution, you know? So anyway,
Hey, Marcus, real quick, you keep using this one word that's resonating so deeply with me, and this show up. And I think my wife, she listens to this song. It's like a morning meditation about showing up for yourself. And it's really around because we're all trying to manage our mental health space right now. And my encouragement, man, as you drill that word in a number of times, is I think folks have to first figure out how to show up for themselves. It's that same analogy that we always use when the mask fall down, you put your mask on before you get somebody else's, right? I think you show up for yourself first, take care of yourself mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and then figure out how do you engage in this process. The beautiful thing I wanted to say, man, is that where we are now, things are not perfect, but I appreciate more people being on the front line.
Yes.
Of what's going on. And
yes.
So, you know, whether that's
I see it, man. I see it. It's
real.
This
is not just a black issue. It really is a human issue, man.
Yes.
So
I'm
thankful.
And the more it's happening, it's touching more people. It's like, what do you think? These black people only like exist in black people's lives?
Yeah.
They don't.
That's good.
You know what I'm saying? They're part
good.
of the world with everybody else, you know. Trust me, there are some white people's lives who've been absolutely devastated by these murders. You know what I mean? And so you're absolutely right, man. Anyway, look, thank you for
appreciate it.
Thank you for letting me just kind of have that dialogue with you. And
I needed it.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, man, I will do it for you. I'm gonna promote you and show you some love, man. Everybody out there, follow my man Aaron. At Fatherhood is dope on Instagram. He does a great job on Instagram. You know, it's he blends, you know, awesome promos of the show, but also he's got the most beautiful family and he does not hide it. You know, they take wonderful photos of themselves. And so like, if you ever, you know, I kind of like Instagram because like, you know, pretty people, and I think lots of people are pretty, but like pretty people take pretty pictures and like, it's like, okay, I feel good. Aaron's Instagram makes me feel good. I see his beautiful family and I'm like, okay, there's good in the world. You know what I'm saying? There's good in the world. So fatherhoodisdope.com. Go subscribe to the podcast. It is hard for podcasters out here to grow our following. Go follow this podcast. especially if you're a guy. Lots of inspiring stories, things you'll be able to relate to. Go check them out. The book, Create and Orchestrate, in stores right now. Go grab it if you haven't already. The podcast, Marcus Whitney's Audio Universe, everywhere that you subscribe to and listen to podcasts. You can follow me online at Marcus Whitney. That is it. Everybody stay safe out there. Yeah, thank you, brother. Everyone stay safe out there. Thoughts and prayers with everybody in Louisiana and Texas navigating these storms. I hope y'all stay safe. Stay in shelter. Take care of each other out there. We're gonna do the same here in Nashville as this weather rolls through here over the next couple of days. And I will see y'all next week with another episode of Marcus Whitney Live. Until then, let's build a new normal, y'all. Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to Marcus Whitney's Audio Universe.